you are having trouble with your kids after a toxic relationship, the first thing I want to say is I am so sorry. I know it isn't fair that you've been through the hell of a toxic relationship and then you go through the journey to get out of it, and maybe with the thought of I'm going to keep my kids safe, or I want to raise my kids in a home where there's not fussing and fighting, or I can't do this anymore, I need to give my kids a great mom, a great life. And then you run into problems in your own home. Kids being disrespectful, kids being out of control, maybe even kids being aggressive, kids being in your face, kids not following the rules, kids playing the other parent against you. And there's such fear because you think, what if they choose them? What if they choose them? What if they go with, the other parent? What if they go with a friend? What if they go with a grandmother and, never even, I don't even have any contact with them anymore? Okay? I understand those fears. And so I want to start off this training with saying, I'm so sorry. Okay? And I'm sorry that the pressure the outside society puts on you that says, well, you should figure out your kid, you should do better. There may have been years of things where your life felt out of control. And now you're in a situation where you feel like your kids are out of control. Okay? And so if that is happening to you, and I'm, there's two components to this, okay? I'm going to break it down lots of different ways. If you guys know, you've seen my training video, the work I do is called like the diamond down method, because I don't hit things this way typically. I hit like all the angles to turn into a diamond, just like a diamond is chiseled and creates beauty for itself, okay? So, first of all, you have choices. You have choices. If you have a child who is, especially an older child, I'm mainly talking about people with older kids here, but if you have a kid who you feel like is out of control or is aggressive or is manipulating or is using you or taking advantage of you, you have choices. It may not feel like you have choices because society's like, oh, how could you ever, people say like, how could I ever cast out my child? And it's a horrible situation. It's a horrible situation. My teenage son won't listen to me. He's getting in my face. He's scaring me. I try to set consequences and he won't listen to me. It's a terrifying situation. But I want to empower you with the fact that you have choices. And we're going to talk about what some of those choices are. Okay? And there's two components to this, right? There's the child's behavior, and then there are your feelings, your guilt, your fear, all that stuff surrounding the behavior. And I want to really see those as two different problems. Please see those as two different problems. Your child's behavior and then your feeling, guilt, fear surrounding their behavior, okay? Two separate things, because we get them all conglomerated, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, he's doing this, but I can't, or she's doing this, but I can't do this as my own child. How could I ever? And then my neighbors are going to think that they're going to go with their ex, and it turns into this storm. You could never, ever, ever solve a storm. You want to break down the storm into a strategy. Okay, and that's with everything that I do, but with toxic kids in particular. So many of you, some of you are actually in situations where the kid is being very aggressive, and you're saying they're triggering you because of what happened with your ex, but in actuality, they may be acting exactly like your ex. They may be trying to power over you. They may be trying to get you to do the work of the relationship. They may be trying to get the best end of the deal. They may be trying to avoid responsibility. They may be trying to avoid being held accountable for their actions. They may be avoiding consequences. Life will not do that for them. Life will not allow them to not have consequences. Okay? And I know as a parent, it feels like, oh my gosh, right? Because you're probably in a toxic relationship because you gave. And you thought your unselfishness would create a relationship. Your unselfishness would earn you love. Your unselfishness would earn you favor. And then something happens with the ex. Maybe you're still in the house with him. Maybe it's not an ex, or something happens, or you decide to leave. And you think, oh, who do I have left? I have these babies. And so you use the same strategy of let me give. Plus you've got the guilt of their dad, or, whatever situation they're in. You don't have as much money. You don't have this. You don't have that. So guilt. Give. Guilt and give. Guilt and give. Guilt and give. Guilt and give. And it creates this dynamic where you do all the work of the relationship and the child reaps all the reward. Okay? I'm not judging you. I'm just explaining what happens. You guys know this is true. And you feel bad, and you have love in your heart. And you want someone to give that love to. And your child feels like a very safe place that you think, oh, I can just love them. I can just love them. I can just love them. I can just give to them. I don't have to set boundaries with my children, right? I'm supposed to put myself last with them. I don't have to set boundaries with my children. And then it snowballs, and it snowballs, and it snowballs. And at some point you wake up and you're like, who are these little monsters? Who are these little monsters? And I laugh because sometimes you just have to laugh. It's such a difficult thing. It's such a difficult thing. But you're saying, who are these little monsters that I'm supposed to deal with right now? Okay? Now, so that's what happened to get you to this point, right? You give love, and you thought if you gave love, they would be grateful for what you did. If you treated them like a king or a queen, they would be grateful for that. Rather, what has happened instead is they expect that. They expect you to be their servant. They expect you to take care of all their problems. They expect you to do all the work of the relationship. They expect you to fix everything for them. Okay? So some of you, that may not be you. Some of you, it is, right? So 2 major ways to address this. One is addressing their emotions behind it, right? Addressing their fear, addressing their pain, addressing their own emotional storm. Because if the partner you're with was toxic, they probably cannot express those emotions and needs and fears with that person, because that person is not good at dealing with other people's emotions anyway. And if you're the kind, caring, empathetic one, you're the one who's good at dealing with this stuff, right? And your child knows you are the one good at dealing with this stuff, okay? So option 1, and especially the younger your children are, the more I would use this strategy, is like, what's going on? Do you want to talk about this? Like, I see you just in this incredible emotional storm right now, and I see you trying to power over me, and I see you really saying hurtful things and ugly things, and I'm only assuming you're trying to push my buttons right now. Can we talk about what's going on? Or, even with my son, when he's like doing something, I'll be like, because he's just turned 10, and I'll say, you're acting like a baby in a high chair right now. You're not a baby anymore. When you were a baby in a high chair, you were stomping at the, the high chair and throwing food on the floor, and I would scurry around and pick up the food off the floor and take care of it for you. Okay? We all do that for our babies. But then our babies grow up, and we're trying to create adults, not permanent children. And I do hope that is your parenting goal. Not raising a child who will never leave you, but raising an adult who is going to be an incredibly functioning, healthy, happy member of society and contribute to society. Right? I think that is your goal, right? So, 1, you can, there's an emotional storm, and you can address the emotional storm. Especially when the kids are younger, this is very, very much what I would recommend. I told you the example of my son in the high chair, and it's like, and he usually laughs, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And it's like, well, you're not the baby in a high chair, and I'm not your servant scurrying around and doing your bidding. You need to take care of this. You can take care of this. Empower them to take care of their own lives, rather than giving in a way that it's like, oh, just need me, please. Other people have left me. You can't leave me. Please need me. Okay? It didn't work in the relationship. It's not going to work in this. And I know why you do it, and it is good, kind, loving, giving, and forgiving. And my heart, if I could just hold you all right now as I'm saying this. That is where my heart is right now. Empathy is like level 20 out of 10 on this issue. But I want to help fix it for you, right? So that is one great example, okay? Like the high chair, explaining that emotional storm, addressing the emotions and staying calm and saying, what's going on emotionally with you right now? Okay? Second option, boundaries. I don't let people talk to me that way anymore. If you continue to this, then I will do this. Okay? If you continue to do this, then I will do this. There needs to be a timeline on the consequence. For example, adult children who will not leave the home, refuse to follow, get a job, leave the coop, leave the nest. It's like having a 13-year-old, but they're 23, right? And they're in your house and they're creating messes and they're creating, storms and getting away with everything and, expecting you to pay for them. And it's like, okay, you have, a month to get a job. You have a week to get out of the house, find somewhere else to go. You have 6 weeks to this. You have 8 weeks to this, okay? And if you have not met my expectation in 6 weeks, then I will, whatever it is, take away your car. Basically some other people who've set boundaries with their kids, kind of the one give I have is like health insurance. Maybe continuing to pay their health insurance in case something happened. I would feel horrible, if my kid couldn't have medical care. But everything else, you don't need a phone. You can get that yourself. You're an adult. You take care of your own car. You take care of your own bills. You take care of your own rent. Okay? But it's not mean. The kid will tell you it's mean because they're not getting their way. It is empowering them to take care of themselves, become a functioning member of society. It is the nice thing to do. It is the right thing to do. We've all heard the term enabling. Giving and giving and giving and giving to our kids without them having to do any of the work of their own lives is what we mean by enabling. Okay? So, sometimes the consequence is really bad. Like, if you're not here, I'm going to change the locks on the door. And you've got to make that choice, right? And it depends on your situation. My choice is, if someone is in my face and getting violent in my home, I'm not to be around them. If someone is taking money from me, or someone is, just completely out of control, that's somebody I can't be around. Even if it means their dad is winning, right? Because you think, oh my gosh, if they left and went to their dads, no matter how bad their behavior is, if they left and went to their dad would be winning. And I'm sure their dad is playing this game. I am sure he is, making them want to be with him and, playing this game. Oh, it'd be so much better over here. You should create a ruckus at your mother's house. Okay, I'm sure he's encouraging this, which you can't control. You cannot control what he does, right? You could just call it out with your child and say, my guess is, this is what's happening. You're, over at this house, it's this set of rules, and here at our house, I actually have rules. And, but I cannot be your puppet. Call it out. Kids align with power. I cannot be your puppet. I cannot scurry around like the mom with the newborn in the high chair, pounding for the rest of your life. So there's going to be some really hard consequences if you do not obey the rules. Remember, their behavior is one set of problems, and you feeling bad about their behavior is a whole nother set of problems. Don't mix them together and say things like, well, I can't do that because then I'll feel, I can't do that because then people will think, well, I can't do that because then I'll, whatever's going to happen in that situation, okay? Two separate problems. And you have choices. You may say, the cost of setting those consequences isn't worth it to me. But you have to ask yourself, what is the cost of not setting those consequences? Because you think the cost is keeping your children, right? You think you're keeping your children. But anyone from the outside who was watching this situation with you and your kids, if they were completely disrespectful, if they were out of control, if you couldn't get them, if they didn't follow your rules, if you couldn't get them to do what you needed them to do, No one out on the outside looking in is thinking she has her children. This is a good relation. This is going to go well in the future. Like, nobody would be thinking that. But in your head, it just feels like despair. It feels like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to deal with this, right? Okay, and I hope very few of you relate to this video, but I know I have a lot of questions about it, and so I know some of you do. There's also, if at all possible, to see, just like we see their behavior as one problem, and then how we feel about the situation is another problem, or two separate issues. Also think about your children individually, if at all possible. If you have an older child who's raising a ruckus and, hurting the younger child, the younger child is, falling into the older child's behavior because that's what they see modeled, do everything you can to separate the two of those. This is one child, I'm going to address things with this child. This is another child, I'm going to address things with this child. Don't think my children are out of control. Because it may be one child's out of control and then really influencing the younger child, and you might be able to really gain some momentum with that younger child, especially with that younger child saying, what's really going on? What's happening? I feel like there's an emotional storm. I'm your mom. I'm a safe place for you. I'm a safe place for you. Okay? So, just to recap. Think about your situation, two separate problems. What the child's doing and then how you feel about it. You don't have that many choices about what your child is doing, right? You have a lot of choices on how you feel about it. If you're going to let guilt get in the way, if the consequences of doing something to you is worse than the consequences of not doing something. But I just want you to take an honest look, and it's like, if I set consequences, even if it's like having to get outside people involved, if I set consequences, they're going to hate me. And it's like, what's happening now? I'm not saying that they hate you, but they obviously do not respect you. There's obviously going to have to be some real changes to get to a healthy place. Because you think if it's like, I'm losing my children physically if I set these consequences and they get mad. But it's like, is it really having or do you really have your children if they're just manipulating the situation? It's like with your, toxic relationship. It's like, I got him to stay. I did everything he wanted. I, became his servant. I put my feelings to the side. I shrunk myself so he'd never get mad at me. I changed myself in 1,000 different ways. And then what happened? It's still not enough. Don't apply the same strategies with your children. Children align with power. Children do the emotional connection first. And if that does not work, you need hard consequences. If you do this, then this will happen. You may not like those consequences because their behavior may be so extreme that you have to get outside people involved, like a child psychologist or something like that. And sometimes it even messes up your court stuff because then the dad's like, well, he's no problem at my house. He's fine there. And you have to ask yourself, is it worth the peace in your home for him to just go to his dad's for a while? Because if it's so great there, and I know that sounds like a horror show. I know that sounds like, my heart is breaking even as I say it. But just take a really honest look about what is actually happening in your house. Because the craziness is the relationship that you have right now. It's not the relationship you want, but it is the relationship that you have. And I'm really big on solving the problems you have, not the problems you wish you had. Okay? So, put a timeline on those consequences, if and then. And then when they break those consequences, see that as one rule, one section, okay? How you feel, gosh, I can't tell anybody what's happening in my home. Gosh, I can't let them stay with his dad's for an extra weekend. Gosh, I can't kick them out of the house. Gosh, I can't take away their car if they talk to me that way. It's an entirely separate issue. Their behavior, how you feel about it. You may not have a lot of choices about how they behave. You have a lot of choices on the consequences that you do or decide not to set. Just look at what it's costing you now. Because we think in our head, I can't do that because it's going to cost me this. But we don't think, I'm not going to set consequences. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to play nice and give. Because if I don't do that, then, the situation's already bad. Like you giving and giving and them taking and you not setting consequences, it's costing you a lot. It's costing you, and it's costing your relationship with your child. That's a super unhealthy dynamic that may need a break or may need some serious thing to happen to come back together. Kids love their parents. Nobody says I don't want a mom and a dad. Eventually, it can absolutely turn around. But if there's so much damage that has been done by kids being in your face, kids being disrespectful, kids taking complete advantage of you, it's going to be even harder to build that relationship later on. Rather than you saying, I'm not someone who, I don't let people talk to me that way anymore. You're going to have to find someone else to manipulate. I don't play those games. I'm more interested in who you are as an adult rather than you being happy with me as a child. I'm not afraid of you. Okay? And think about your kids as individuals, not as a collection. Because there may be one child who's really the problem and one child who you could really offer some more solutions to if the other child wasn't influencing them. Very hard topic. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments and let me know. Bye.